Welcome to The Detail. I'm your host, Cathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. And today you can also watch us live online on the WSLR website, wslr.org, or on Facebook, on our Facebook page. With me today, I have two candidates for Sarasota City Commission's District 2 Commission seat. Terry Turner and Liz Alpert are my guests this morning. So we're going to be talking about city issues, why they're running, what they would like to do for the city of Sarasota. And as you may know, there are 6 candidates running for the District 2 City Commission seat. So I'm interviewing 2 at a time. Welcome, Terry and Liz. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes.
Thank you for having us on, Cathy.
Absolutely. So I'd like to kick it off the way I do with all candidates. Please introduce yourself, briefly give us some idea of who you are and tell us why you're running for City Commission. And Liz, we'll start with you.
Well, good morning. And again, I'm Commissioner Liz Alpert, and I'm running for re-election to the Sarasota City Commission. And before I tell you why I'm running, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the oldest of 8 children. My dad was a truck driver, and my mother stayed home to take care of all of us. So due to my family's financial situation, I wasn't able to go to college right after high school. So I started working and went to school when I could, taking a class or 2 at every opportunity. It took me nearly 20 years to get my undergraduate degree and also raise 3 daughters, but I never stopped pursuing my dream. My ultimate goal was to become an attorney. I finally got that opportunity at age 54, and I took it. While in law school, I served on the city's Human Relations Board. Then I served on the Civil Service Personnel Board until my election in 2015. I'm now a practicing family law and estate planning attorney in addition to my duties as a city commissioner. The reason I'm running is because I want to continue the progress we've made in the past 5 years for a smarter, better, sustainable Sarasota. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Terry Turner, tell us about you and why you're running.
Good, thank you. I'm from Ohio, married with 2 kids and 4 grandchildren. And the important thing that's relevant to City Commission is that for nearly 30 years, I worked in financial management and in general management, mostly at very large international banks. I was the corporate treasurer for Bank of America in San Francisco, a managing director for Bankers Trust in New York, and a financial controller for Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York. I also taught finance and economics at the University of California, Berkeley, and I was previously a city commissioner from 2009 to 2013. And I helped lead the city through the last Great Recession. I'm running for office because I know there's a better way. I know we don't have to accept what's happening to our city. And I know that one vote on the commission can make an enormous difference. Thank you.
Okay, Terry, thank you. Well, I'd like to kick it off with the hot topic that Florida is a hotspot now. We know that yesterday over 5,000 new cases, the latest data showing that there are over 5,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the state of Florida. Sarasota County seems to be venturing also into the red zone when it comes to the number of cases that are being diagnosed. As a city commissioner, if elected, because it doesn't appear that this pandemic is going to be solved tomorrow. What do you see, Liz, what do you see as your current role and future role? Terry, what do you see as the role of a city commissioner in addressing this public health crisis? Terry, we'll start with you.
Thank you. The virus response is mainly going to be controlled at the federal level and the state level. What's needed is widespread testing, contact tracing, and appropriate quarantining, and a massive investment in medical research with a view to finding better treatments and a vaccination. That unfortunately is not what's happening. The city has a pretty limited role in this. Its main role is to implement federal and state mandates, to coordinate effectively with the state government and federal government. And I think under Mayor Jen's leadership, the city has done a reasonable job there. Another area where the city needs to enter is education and providing information to citizens and businesses on resources that might be available at the state and federal level. Beyond that, I think the city was correct in declaring an emergency. It facilitated relief from both the state and the federal government and set up the lines of communication. But the problem, unfortunately, cannot be solved. This virus is too communicable. It cannot be solved at simply the city level. We need a state and federal approach. Thank you.
Okay, Terry, thanks for that answer. And then Liz, how do you see your role? Yeah, with dealing with the coronavirus. Sure.
Well, obviously, I think, that the really highest role of government is the public safety and welfare. I mean, that's something that we need to consider in all the decisions that we make. The public's health, safety, and welfare is, I think, always at the top of our minds when we're working on things in the city. One of the things that we're doing is there is an emergency meeting Monday, actually, that will be discussing whether we should make mask mandatory in the city. I agree with Terry. It's not something that we can solve alone in the city of Sarasota. It certainly has to come from the federal government, the state government, regionally, with the counties. The virus doesn't know where city lines are or county lines are. However, that doesn't mean that we can't do some proactive things in the city to do our little part. It's sort of like, well, if each citizen takes an action, if we all did that, that's going to make a difference citywide, statewide, countrywide. So I think that there are things that we can do. We're going to be handing out about 50,000 face masks in the city. We're going to be starting a program where we're encouraging the use of the face mask, maybe with some incentives for using them. And, and I'm finding that the emails I'm getting about mandatory masks are really weighing in the favor of doing some sort of mask program where, at least on the indoor businesses, if we want to keep our businesses open, and they don't have to open and reclose like a number of them had to because of the coronavirus outbreak, then I think the city does need to take some sort of action to try to tamp down this virus as much as we possibly can.
Okay, all right. And moving on to another very important topic these days, and Black Lives Matter. And we've seen, obviously, the death of George Floyd in Minnesota with a policeman putting a knee on this man's neck and causing his death, ignited a lot of pent-up frustration in the United States. 1 week prior to that, however, the same a Sarasota policeman also put his knee on the neck of a Black man who was being arrested. The video of that incident didn't get released until a week after Mr. Floyd's death. People in the city are concerned. Minorities, obviously, the Black community, the Latin community are concerned about the community relationship with the police. What do you see as a necessary steps or ideas to improve this situation? And Liz, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, one of the good things about what's happening in the city and what's been happening is our chief of police has instituted community policing. She is now taking an additional measure where she's forming community action teams. She's basically reimagining the police force. Prior to that, however, though, our policies were in line with the 8 can't wait policies that have been recommended throughout the country to deal with excessive force and how policing should happen. So I think we're well on our way to making those things happen. And I think with creating this community action team, which the idea is instead of a street crimes team, it's reimagined as, yes, they'll deal with the street crimes, but they're also going to be looking at what are the situations, what's causing the crime. And I think that's the way to approach it.
Okay. Terry, what are your thoughts?
I'd like to go back a little bit. When I was on the commission previously, we had a similar event with an officer who, in the entryway of the portico of the sheriff's department, had a citizen in custody who was down on the ground, and he kicked him a couple of times. And because of that event, the city commission implemented a number of steps that I think we're benefiting from still today. One is we instituted a police citizens advisory committee whose purpose was to advise both the city commission, an independent committee to advise both the city commission and the police department on best practices. And then the second thing we did was we created a citizens complaint committee, also an independent committee, that provided an independent vehicle for citizens who felt they were treated unfairly or badly by the police to register complaints and have that used by the police chief to adjust and change policies. And the third thing during that period of time, we made a shift to community policing, and we started that effort with the hiring of Chief DePino. Those efforts have been very helpful. I think that we have come a long way with community policing, and I'll talk about the knee event in a minute, but I think that the fact that we've gone through all of these difficult periods with George Floyd without significant violence. The demonstrations here locally have occurred almost all peacefully. I know of no significant violence that's occurred as a result of those demonstrations, and I think that's a credit to Chief DePino and to the Sarasota Police Department.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
That said, there are always opportunities for improvement, and there are always outlier events. One of the areas where I think we can improve is the Citizens Advisory Committee has been ignored somewhat by this commission. It's been without a chairman for quite some time. A very good person applied recently, quite competent person applied for that chair seat, and the commission, I think, for political reasons, decided to try to find more candidates. The other thing that I think we could be doing is, of course, the Ready for 8 is an important initiative that I think flows from Chief DePino, and the incident with the knee on the neck was not previously out of policy, and the chief has made that an out of policy procedure. And so I think that reflects an ongoing fine police department that's reacting in a difficult environment. When they make mistakes, they're self-correcting. But I do think we need to reinvigorate the Police Advisory Board and the Citizens Complaint Board to provide more independent input in the improvement process.
Okay. I want to ask a clarifying question. Can you define ready for 8 quickly, Liz? Because I'm not sure our audience knows what that is.
Well, it's an initiative that was proposed, and I believe it was by the Obama Foundation of ways of policing in the community. And I don't know, I don't have the 8 points in front of me right now
Okay.
as to what
Yeah.
they are, but use of excessive force is certainly one of them, is how you mitigate that. And
Mhm.
it's a lot of the other things that have to be done by the police department.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to a discussion with candidates Terry Turner and Liz Alpert. They have both actually been Liz is a current incumbent. Terry has been a city commissioner. They're both running for District 2. Hotel houses. This, I think, is a concern around the city, but particularly in District 2, especially on Lido and St. Armands. Residents have been very upset about houses which have become full-time Airbnbs, and they actually, in effect, are basically small hotels. Residents complain about increased noise, parking issues. What do you think is the best approach to handle this problem, if any? Can we do anything about this? And if so, what? Terry, I'll start with you.
First, I'd say that I believe that these are businesses in a single family residence. And so I believe that they are in violation of our codes. I think they should be closed down because they are a business. The city will almost certainly end up in court for that, but I think the city needs to be aggressive with its legal posture on these entities. In the interim, we need to dramatically beef up code enforcement in the city. What we have currently is complaint-driven code enforcement. A citizen has a neighbor, and he has to call someone at the city who responds sometimes after the violation has occurred. We need to have additional code enforcement officers who are patrolling proactively, not only with respect to these hotel houses, but with respect to noise violations around the city. That's just not happening. The other thing we need to do is we need to undertake an aggressive lobbying effort with the League of Counties and the League of Cities to get the state of Florida to give back to cities more home rule, to allow cities to regulate these business activities more aggressively. We are currently able to do under state law.
Okay, Liz, how about you? Hotel houses,
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I think, what Terry said, a lot of that is correct. And, what we've asked the city attorney to do is look into what we can do and what we can't do, because we are constrained. There are zoning issues, but certainly enforcement is key to making sure that even if it turns out that we have to leave them there, that then they're not causing a nuisance in the neighborhood, because under the zoning code there's restrictions on you can't say, well, you can only have so many bedrooms, for instance, in your house. If you're building, they're building supposedly a single family house, but is it really? So we have to look at the zoning, we have to beef up the enforcement, and definitely lobby the legislature so that we have the ability to regulate them how we want to in each and every municipality in the state.
Okay, all right. Strong mayor. This is an initiative. Strong Mayor's been voted down actually 3 times by city residents. And this is a mayor, we currently have a commission form of government with a ceremonial mayor who is not elected but appointed by their fellow commissioners. A strong mayor would actually take the place of our current city manager, kind of like the CEO of the city. And strong mayor models have a commission, a weak commission, which has some budget oversight. So strong mayor, as I said, has been voted down. The most recent attempt in 2014 failed for lack of ability to get the number of signatures required to put it on the ballot in the time frame. As a city commissioner, I'm wondering two things. One, do you support a strong mayor? Do you want to change our form of government? Number one. And number two, would you, as a city commissioner, vote to put an amendment on the ballot that would change the charter from our current form of government to a strong mayor? Then that's never been done before. All of the initiatives before have been citizen initiated. So, do you support a strong mayor? Would you use your vote to put it on the ballot? Liz, you're first.
You know, I really don't have a strong feeling one way or the other about a strong mayor or not a strong mayor. And it works in some cities. Our form of government, I think, is working. What I think the argument is the feeling that with our form of government, there is poor decision making and mismanagement, but that can occur under no matter what kind of government that you have. So would I vote to allow the citizens to vote for it? Yes, I would. And as you said, Cathy, it's been voted down 3 times in our city. So if people want a strong mayor, fine. If not, and I don't know why every few years this issue keeps coming up. The last time I ran, this issue came up, so I would leave it up to the voters.
Okay, Terry Turner.
Well, actually, it's been put before the voters 5 times since 1950. But this question comes up a lot, Cathy, and I'm going to answer the question partly with some questions. The county has exactly the same form of government. County government is not demonstrably better managed than the city government. And so my question is, why isn't there this clamoring for an elected chairman in county government? The other question I would ask is, all of these initiatives have come out of the development community and the business community and have been repeatedly rejected by the citizens, as we've agreed. It's pretty clear that the development community wants this and our citizens don't. And so I would ask you, why? With respect to the differences in form of government, in the early 1900s, the dominant form of government, in fact, the only form of government, was a strong mayor form of government. It lacked transparency. The mayors typically tended to be incompetent, and corruption was rife. A reform movement started, led by Louis Brandeis and Theodore Roosevelt, to find a better form of government. And the form of government they chose to promote was the corporate form of government, with a corporate board of independent directors and a president and CEO reporting to the board. That's the city manager form of government, with the commission fulfilling the role of board of directors, setting policy, and holding the president accountable for execution. In this case, the city manager accountable. It is currently the dominant form of government in small cities throughout the United States. It promotes competence on the part of staff. It promotes transparency, and it minimizes corruption. So I believe strongly that it's the best form of government, and more importantly, most of our citizens agree with me. Now, with respect to the question that you asked narrowly, would I vote to put an initiative on the ballot? There's 2 parts to that question. If there is a citizen initiative petition drive that has sufficient petitions to put it on the ballot for the electorate to consider, the city commission has a ministerial responsibility to pass an ordinance putting on the ballot.
Well, I'm not talking about that.
I just wanted to
Yes,
clarify.
you're
I
right.
would vote for that. Were there a motion initiated by a fellow member of the commission
Mhm.
on the ballot, I would vote no.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the fuller explanation. I appreciate that. And I didn't realize it had come up 5 times for a vote in Sarasota in the city. So I would like to ask you both about the Selby Gardens master plan that came before the city commission. It failed. But something like that may come up again. This is, for our listeners, if you're not familiar, at the corner of Orange and Mound, or 41, at Selby Gardens, there was a proposal to put a very large parking garage with about 500 spaces, a restaurant on top, which would have had a water view, and people in the neighborhood were very concerned about traffic. It's come to be known as like the T-shirt wars, these issues where people come in different colored T-shirts to talk about typically a development issue. What would your position be about a similar plan, or give me your thoughts on the prior plan? And I'm also, I want to ask you about noise, because that's something that I know that the neighbors are concerned about at that corner too, is that we have a lot more noise coming from Selby Gardens. So Terry, we'll start with you. Or I'm sorry, actually, yes, Terry, I'll start with you.
Fascinating here.
Yeah.
It's important to start the answer to this question with a discussion of the intention of the comprehensive land use plan and the zoning code. The comprehensive plan is based on the notion that we start with high intensity and high density in the central core. And we step down both intensities and densities as we radiate out from the center of the city. So we have 18-story buildings downtown. We have 10-story buildings downtown. And if you go 5 miles from the city, we have single-family residential on a quarter, a third, or a half an acre. The Selby Gardens is in a transition zone. It's in a buffer zone that is intended, in terms of the comp plans and design, to buffer single-family neighborhoods to the south of it from the high-intensity, loud noise densities in the central core. The proposal that the Selby Gardens provided was to convert essentially a small display garden and a scientific research facility into a major event center on the bay. It is, without a doubt, inconsistent with the spirit and the letter of the comprehensive plan, and it was rightly rejected by 4 of the city commissioners. The proposal would expand an existing event activity on the part of Selby Gardens. Currently, the Selby Gardens has a large number of events with late night loud music. It is very disruptive for the neighborhoods south and east of the Selby Gardens. People are having loud noises at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I know of one instance where a person had turned on his security system and had left. The noise was so loud that it caused his security system to go off. So the proposal for a major event center is just simply not compatible with the single-family residential neighborhoods that adjoin the city, or join the Selby Gardens.
Okay, thank you for that answer. If you're just joining us, you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5, LPFM in Sarasota, and WBPV 100.1 in Bradenton, Florida. Streets of Paradise is an organization that serves Sarasota's homeless, and they offer personal supplies like shampoo, soap, deodorant, toothpaste, toothbrushes, razors, shaving cream, feminine hygiene products. For more information on how to support them through volunteerism or donations, go to streetsofparadise.org. Liz Alpert, I want to give you the same question, and I will remind you, I was asking you both about the Selby Gardens master plan, which would have put a large garage at Orange and 41, and also the noise issues that people are concerned about with the events happening there. So what are your thoughts on a future plan for Selby Gardens, Liz?
Well, to begin with, the future plan for Selby Gardens is a separate issue from the event center. The event center is there. That wasn't the plan that Selby Gardens was presenting. The parking garage merely was to be able to have parking for people who go to Selby Gardens right now. The noise with the event center, that has to be addressed separately. And from what I understand, Selby has put in a totally new sound system, has made a lot of changes to try to alleviate some of the concerns about that. The proposal that was before the commission, I think, got mixed up with the site plan issues. The proposal that was before the commission was merely to change the comp plan designation for that property from what it's zoned as now, which could be condos and offices, to a botanical gardens and restaurant. That seemed to make sense. Selby Gardens has been there 50 years. So to designate that area as a botanical gardens, which then would preserve that as a botanical gardens in perpetuity, made sense to me. And the proposal before us was merely to send that comp plan change to the state for their review. It would come back to us, and then the site plan issues were totally separate. That being said, in terms of the parking garage, they can do a parking garage there right now without a comp plan change. So parking garage can be allowed with the same number of cars. It would just take up a bigger footprint in the gardens rather than being a little bit higher and taking up less of the green space. So for me, that made sense. The Selby Gardens people were making changes to the intersection of 41 and Orange to alleviate a lot of the traffic concerns, and a lot of the considerations were of the neighborhood were taken into consideration and changes made to the design. So it makes sense to me that if you're going to have a parking garage there anyway, I'd rather have it take up less of the green space and have more green space for the gardens. And the event center issue, as I said, is a totally different issue. The event center is there now.
Okay, thank you both for those answers. Yes.
May I respond to that?
Okay, quickly. Yes, please.
If it's a bad idea, we shouldn't pass the buck to the state. We should stop it now. The proposal for intensity and density is not consistent with the step down intensity that's envisioned in the comp plan. And as to the question of it's already an event center, that's correct, and it should already be restricted. What's proposed in this is a massive expansion in the event center, and 450 cars in a parking garage suggests that Selby is expecting a big expansion in events. And there's no question that the traffic associated with a parking garage that size and a major event center on the bay and expansion of existing event activities will be incompatible and inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and very destructive to the adjoining neighborhoods.
Okay, Liz, did you want to respond?
Well, what I said before is they can have the parking garage there with the same number of cars. It just takes up more of the green space. So the issue of the number of cars
Yeah.
is kind of a moot point.
Is it because the number of cars, it's as large as like the State Street garage. I'm surprised that they can do that without any special approvals, but that's what you're saying, Liz, that they can.
That's what I understand, is that the new proposal coming forward does not require a comp plan change and doesn't require changes. So, so they should be, and if that's the case, then we're talking about the same number of cars. So better that it take up less of a footprint. And when you look at that, monument to I don't know what in Lukewood Park, the lift station, and how huge that I think was the bigger mistake, is to put that huge building in Lukewood Park and have our lift station right there.
You're talking about at 301 and 41, this spur
Exactly.
there. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's important for us to talk about these two issues. There's a chronic homeless population in Sarasota. I think that the city's done a very good job of helping homeless families, people who have simply fallen on hard times. But for those with mental illness or addiction issues, it's a tougher row to hoe. And I'm wondering two things. I want to ask you about the homeless situation and then affordable housing, but let's start with helping our homeless population. Liz, what are your thoughts moving forward on how the city can improve?
Well, certainly what would be an improvement is more funding for mental health. And in fact, there was a move to create a mental health district in the county with the support of the city, but with when the pandemic came, that was taken off the table, because you're right. Most of the chronic homeless, or a large number of them, are, have addiction problems, mental illness, reasons why that makes it very difficult for anyone interacting with them to convince them to take advantage of services and get off the streets. That being said, we have made tremendous progress with the Housing First, with the mental health court, the homeless court, the continuum of care. It's been a partnership to create a situation where, when I was elected in 2015, the homeless point in time count was 1,106, and now it's 335. So we've made huge strides, but I think more mental health funding, and it's something that we need to certainly lobby the state for getting more mental health funding. But also, I think once we can get past this pandemic issue, is that we work with the county and create a mental health district so that we can dedicate funds to mental health and, for the people who are on the street and off the street.
Okay, Terry, how about you? What are your thoughts on helping the homeless?
I think that the Housing First approach is the right approach. I'd point out that it was instituted by the city at a commission that followed my service on the committee and preceded Liz's service on the committee. And it has shown promising results. The outreach efforts and the Housing First approach, which started when Susan Chapman was a city commissioner, have had a positive effect. But we have a looming recession that's going to be far worse than the Great Recession of 2009. The Great Recession of 2009 took 4 to 5 years to play out. The city's revenue was under pressure for at least 4 to 4.5 years. The city is going to be experiencing declining revenues. We're going to see a large increase in homelessness because of economic circumstance. In 2009 and 10, Many people lost their jobs, which led to them losing their houses, which led to families sleeping in our parks. On ride-arounds with police during that period of time, late at night, I often saw a police officer have to cause a family sleeping at the 10th Street park to move on. It was sad and tragic. And the city needs to commit significant resources to help those people, principally through the Housing First program. We're going to need to spend money over the next 4 or 5 years. This pandemic is not going to go away quickly, and the economic consequences are not going away quickly. And this city commission is not prioritizing spending from a long-term point of view. They're taking a very short-term perspective to financing and funding of the budget. We need to answer the question, how are we going to help the homeless 3 years from now and 4 years from now? Thank you.
Okay, so I want to transition to Liz. You can respond because
Yeah,
it'll be related, but hang on.
Okay.
I want you to weave in, and we'll start with you again. Affordable housing. How are we going to improve our stock of affordable housing in the city? What are your thoughts on accessory dwelling units? So go ahead and respond to Terry about his comments, but then if you would answer that, that'd be
All
great.
right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the statement that the city is not taking a long-term approach to finance is absolutely wrong. We are doing that. We have a very talented and competent finance director. Our deputy city attorney is also a very talented and competent finance director. We've got a city manager who, this is the top of mind, and every city commissioner knows that what needs to be done is that we are going to have budget issues due to the pandemic, due to the economic downturn. And absolutely, we are going to be looking at that long term. Did we do some short term solutions? Of course, because you had to act immediately, knowing that there was going to be a shortfall. But with our budget our budget meetings coming up, we will be looking at how to deal with this long term. Affordable housing, again, with this budget downturn, that does create an issue again with doing what we want to do with affordable housing. Every year we talk about the state legislature and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund called the Sadowski Trust. Every year we lobby that money not get used for other budget purposes and come down to the local governments so that we can use that for affordable housing. And with the pandemic, I think that's going to be, again, another difficult issue. But there are things that we can do. I like the idea of the accessory dwelling units. I think that's one way to add a really easy way to add some affordable housing stock to our city. We had been looking at identifying properties where it could work. The county has been identifying properties. The school board is looking at some of their properties as to where they could locate some affordable housing, because they realize with school teachers, a lot of them need a place to live. So the hospital board as well, looking at some of their properties. So I think a joint effort and collaboration with all of these entities, we can work on doing what we can given the current financial climate to create more affordable housing in our city. But going along with that, it also requires, in some places, increased density. And, I just saw a proposal recently that the county was proposing for some affordable workforce housing in a location, and immediately the neighborhood said, "Oh no, we don't want that there." So I mean, the general population has to also be receptive to this going in their neighborhood.
Okay, Terry, how about you? Affordable housing, accessory dwelling units? And just to clarify for the audience, accessory dwelling unit is like a granny flat in a single family home, an apartment out back or over the garage, that kind of a thing. Terry, what are your thoughts about affordable housing?
Well, I want to talk a little more about homelessness, and then I'll do affordable housing.
Okay, and I have some more questions, so if we can be,
Okay, well,
yeah.
I
Yes,
could
go
prob-
ahead.
I could probably stay here longer than you can.
Yeah.
If we have a long-term financial plan, then I would like Liz to tell me how much money is allocated to help the homeless people in 2024. When we have the answer to that question, we'll have a long-term financial plan. Until then, we're just playing it by ear. With respect to affordable housing, I think the first issue, we need to do an inventory of what we actually have now. I don't think we have an answer to that question. And I think the issue of affordable housing is less pressing today than it was 4 months ago. In 2009, and I believe in 2021, we saw falling housing prices and rents were dramatically lower. So I think there's going to be, because of the economy, an increase, a natural increase in affordable housing over the 3 to 4 year horizon. It will probably resurface when we get back to a booming economy. But as I say, I think it's less critical now, not less important, but less critical. And the city needs to be focusing on other things. The question of how do we get more? Of course, there are zoning incentives. The problem with zoning incentives is that the city and the county always get out negotiated by the development community. We really need affordable housing in perpetuity, and there's enormous incentives on the part of the developer to give it to us for 10 years or 20 years, and then start renegotiating to reduce it. Zoning incentives, I have not yet seen a municipality in the state of Florida provide perpetual long-term affordable housing through zoning incentives, and that's what I would work for.
Okay.
I prefer the housing authority approach, and I also like the idea of producing smaller residential units who have market prices which are lower and more affordable.
Okay. All right. So you are both, Liz, you're an incumbent. Terry, you've been on the commission. And as we all know in politics, you are never going to please everyone. So I would like to bring up some things that I'm sure there are people who weren't happy with how you decided. With Liz, the Lido Pavilion development was something that a lot of people opposed. I think the number was 88% on Lido. But in the community, there was a lot of concern about taking a community beach pavilion and pricing out a lot of people. So for both of you, I'd like you to speak to the people who disagreed with you as to why they should vote for you. Terry, when you were an incumbent, when you were on the commission, the municipal auditorium becoming a soundstage for Ringling, that was something that Ringling College people came out in force and opposed that. So speak to the people who might feel uncomfortable because they remember those things, and we're all human. We're going to disagree, but what would you say to the people who didn't agree with you, and why should they vote for you? Liz, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, as you said, of course, it doesn't make any difference which way you vote. You're going to have somebody who disagrees with you in the vote that you take. So my approach actually to governing is that I am the representative of the people. And that doesn't mean that I take a poll and whatever the poll comes out, that's what I should do. Otherwise, you wouldn't need me or anybody else. We would just govern by polling. But what I believe that means is that it's your responsibility to look at all sides of the issue, get as much information as you can to make an informed decision, and then make that decision based on what you believe is for the overall good. Because if you're taking a poll, quite often people are busy. They have lives to lead. They aren't spending their time looking at the pros and cons and all aspects of the decisions that you're making and what are all of the ramifications. They may hear a soundbite here or have their neighbor say something there that says, "Oh my gosh, this is what's happening." But I view it as my responsibility to look at that very carefully and make the best decision possible. And um, I think as a citizen, I prefer somebody who has the courage to take a vote that they believe is for the good of the overall community rather than I guess what do I want to say, bending to the very loudest opponents, because those are the people who are going to come out, who are going to talk about whatever issue it is that they're against it. People that are for it, they're just going about their business and thinking it's going to be okay. So that's how I view it, that I think you want somebody who's looking at all sides of the issue and has the courage to take the vote that they believe is best for the overall good.
Okay, Terry, how about you? Municipal auditorium?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That vote occurred in my first year on the commission. It was a mistake. I made more mistakes in the first year on the commission than I made in my fourth year, but I made mistakes in the fourth year, and if I get reelected again, I'll make a few mistakes. My intent always is to represent the voters, not decide for them. And I always have their interest in mind, not the interest of the developers or businesses. I will endeavor as the best I can to represent the voters of this city, and I'll try really hard not to make another mistake.
Okay. Okay. So we just have a few minutes left. I want to remind my listeners you're listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. Streets of Paradise is an organization that serves Sarasota's homeless. You can learn more about what they do and how to donate your time or money by going to streetsofparadise.org. Just a few minutes left. Terry Turner and Liz Alpert. How do people get in touch with you? And your top 3 priorities. I'm doing this at the end, so you can't talk too long about them. But when you're going in, in business, we'll talk about a 30, 60, 90-day plan. What would be your immediate 3 things that you would focus on as a city commissioner, and why should people vote for you? How should they get in touch with you? You each have a couple of minutes. Terry, we'll start with you.
There are 3 priorities for me. The current city commission is broken. The commissioners squabble endlessly. They're not cooperating and collaborating. And they're not providing clear policy directives to the city manager, nor are they holding him accountable for his performance. My goal as a city commissioner will be to collaborate with my colleagues, and that happens best when you establish mutual trust and respect. My second goal with respect to my service on the next city commission is to curtail the overdevelopment that's going on in the city. We are growing at 1,000 people a year. We're going to be a city of 60,000 people by the end of this year. And there is currently no restraint. The city commission and the city staff is currently processing 78 development applications, which when completed will add 600,000 square feet of office space to the city, 33 additional dwelling units and 900 more hotel rooms. We are not building the public infrastructure that can support the amount of private building that's going on. So my goal will be to get what I call sensible growth, and what I define as sensible growth is private development and public infrastructure proceeding in harmony at about the same pace. And the third objective that I have will dramatically increase the responsiveness of the city government to its citizens. I expect I will, and I hope my fellow commissioners will, and I expect staff to be far more responsive to the citizens of this city and less responsive to the development community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terry, thank you so much. Liz, your turn.
Well, in terms of the collaboration with the fellow commissioners, I'm generally seen as probably the most balanced and thoughtful commissioner on the commission. So I don't think that the issue of getting along with other commissioners is one that I'm having a problem with, and I intend to continue to do that. But my goals really are also planning for smart growth. It was one of the things that I ran on in 2015. I had a background in learning about smart growth and historic preservation through my service 6 years on a board in Tampa where we oversaw the historic districts. And I learned just a ton of things about historic preservation, smart growth, all of those things, and that was in the mid-90s. I want to continue planning for that smart growth, planning a smart multimodal transportation system. We're working on right now Sarasota in Motion so that we have multimodal, more modern transportation where we're not relying just on cars. And we have to remember we're going to have autonomous cars coming soon. So that's going to really change things dramatically. But we need to focus on ways for people to bicycle, to walk, all the different ways to get around, even possibly light rail. Planning for the sea level rise. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, we're getting to the end. I want to thank you all for being with us. You've been listening to The Detail. Liz, Alpert, Terry Turner, thank you so much for your public service and for running. We'll be out there on August 18th, primary day, casting our ballots. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.